So right now, there are actually 80 uncleared explosives just, sitting in the water of the Strait of Hormuz. And they are effectively holding 550 massive cargo ships hostage.
Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today is Friday, June 19th, 2026, which is Juneteenth National Independence Day.
Right, and I'm your resident expert for today's dive. And yeah, it's been exactly 161 years since Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 to basically inform enslaved people of their freedom.
Exactly. And because of the holiday, the U.S. stock markets are closed today, federal offices are closed, banks are shut down. There's this huge expectation of a collective pause, right? But looking at the raw data from all of our sources today, that pause is a complete illusion. The rest of the world is spinning dangerously fast.
Absolutely. The global machinery simply isn't resting at all. I mean, the London Stock Exchange, Tokyo, Hong Kong, they are all trading completely normally. And honestly, more importantly, the underlying tensions that drive those markets are just accelerating, which really defines our mission for today's deep dive. We're exploring this intense real-time battle between control and chaos. We're going to look at how governments and these massive mega corporations are desperately trying to manage physical borders, rewrite the rules of digital spaces, and put a loosh on bleeding-edge AI.
Oh, well, you, me, and basically everyday people are just trying to navigate some crazy extreme weather and maybe find a little bit of joy in sports and, unlimited bread rolls.
Yes, the bread rolls. We will definitely get to the bread rolls. But the contrast today is just striking. Juneteenth is fundamentally a historical reflection on liberation and freedom. But our stack of sources today really forces us to ask very modern questions about authority. Like in 2026, who actually controls our physical, digital, and financial realities?
Yeah, that's the big question. And let's look at the physical reality first, because the geopolitical map right now is incredibly strained.
Now,
Formal U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations were actually supposed to start this weekend in Switzerland.
right, but those are now officially postponed.
Yeah, exactly. Vice President J.D. Vance's trip to Geneva has been totally called off. Former President Trump is up at Camp David for the weekend. And the backdrop to all of this diplomatic stalling is that massive choke point in the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is just wild to think about. Despite that memorandum of understanding signed on Wednesday at Versailles, which was, aimed at keeping commercial traffic moving, the central channel is still blocked by those 80 mines.
Right. The northern route through Iranian waters and the southern route through Omani waters, those are open. But the bottleneck is just massive.
Staggering. The numbers are staggering. We're talking about 160 tankers, 200 bulk carriers, and 60 container ships that are just waiting to exit the Gulf.
Wow.
Yeah, 550 vessels carrying millions of tons of energy, raw materials, consumer goods, all paralyzed by a relatively small deployment of hardware. It is the ultimate manifestation of physical control.
It really is. And that physical conflict is now spilling directly over into the digital world, which is creating a totally different kind of bottleneck. So, The Intercept is reporting that the Israeli government actually submitted formal requests to Meta to remove content on Facebook and Instagram that is sympathetic to Iran.
Wow. Okay. And I want to pause here and be perfectly clear to you listening, because this is important. We are not taking a side here. We are strictly looking at the tension being reported in these sources between platform policy and international conflict. We're not endorsing any viewpoint whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely. Strictly reporting the facts here. Yeah. So we're looking at requests to pull down posts that are, mourning Iranian leaders or showing the physical impacts of missile strikes inside Israel. And Meta claims they are just following their standard existing policies for flagged content, regardless of who actually submits the report.
But critics are arguing that this is essentially wartime political suppression, right?
Exactly. Which totally illustrates the modern dilemma of warfare. In a physical war, you secure borders with troops, or in this case, mines. But in an information war, the border is literally governed by a tech company's terms of service.
That is such a crazy thought.
Right. When a sovereign nation asks a private corporation to alter the digital landscape of a conflict, that corporation basically becomes a geopolitical actor.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Think about this analogy. A physical mine blows up a ship if you touch it. But an algorithmic mine shadow bans a political movement or erases a photo if you use the wrong hashtag.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
One stops a supply chain, and the other stops a narrative. So I have to ask, is it actually harder for global leaders to clear a physical waterway of explosives than it is to navigate the digital minefield of wartime social media?
Honestly, the physical problem, while it's incredibly dangerous, it's a known engineering challenge. You send sweepers, you detonate the threats, and the water is safe.
Right. It's tangible.
Yep. Exactly. But navigating the digital minefield is arguably way harder because the rules are entirely subjective. They're constantly shifting, and they're controlled by a private board of directors. The blast radius, if you will, of a digital moderation decision can completely shift the global narrative of a conflict.
Or just completely erode public trust in an institution. And if tech platforms are acting as these massive global gatekeepers, I guess it makes sense that the U.S. government is attempting this unprecedented expansion of its own gatekeeping powers over technology.
Yeah, that Bloomberg legal analysis on Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is fascinating.
It's wild. He issued a directive targeting two specific AI models from Anthropic Fable 5 and Mythos 5, which are these massive large language models. And he's doing it through export control law, which just seems crazy to me.
It is crazy because export control laws were built for physical goods,
Yeah.
like crates of rifles or nuclear centrifuge parts, or their absolute most abstract, maybe proprietary blueprints.
Wait, okay, let's unpack this. So the government wants to treat logging into Anthropic's AI from another country like exporting a crate of actual munitions.
Essentially, yes.
He isn't trying to stop the transfer of physical servers or software. He's targeting the mere usage of an AI model by foreign nationals. Are we seeing the fundamental breakdown of how the law even works?
That is the core of the legal controversy right there. They're arguing that simply typing a prompt into Fable 5 from outside the country actually constitutes an export of critical national security technology.
Unbelievable.
It's an unprecedented expansion of authority because it targets behavior and interaction rather than a physical transfer. And legal experts are pointing out that this raises massive, unresolved constitutional questions, like how deeply can the government reach into private commercial AI deployments just by waving the flag of national security?
And the government isn't just stretching laws at international borders either. I mean, domestically, the Department of Homeland Security is doing something very similar. NPR reported on a DHS document showing plans to share federal facial recognition technology with local police departments.
And this is the exact same system currently used by federal immigration agents, which is why civil liberties organizations are immediately sounding massive Fourth Amendment alarms.
Which, for a quick refresher, is what protects citizens against unreasonable search and seizure by the government.
Right. And their fear is that deploying federal facial recognition tech to local cops effectively deputizes them to conduct federal immigration enforcement. It expands this massive surveillance dragnet into local communities without any actual authorization or legislation from Congress.
It's just wild. And while the executive branch stretches its limits, the judicial branch is facing this huge backlash for guarding its own gates too closely. There's this student-led group at Emory Law School that just petitioned the Supreme Court to review how the federal judiciary polices its own misconduct.
Yeah, they're arguing that the current self-policing system completely lacks independence and public accountability.
Right. So I have to challenge you on this. From the Emory students calling out judges, to the DHS bypassing legislation, to the Commerce Department trying to regulate a line of code like it's a literal physical weapon. Is the law just too slow for 2026 technology? Are we watching it break down in real time?
I wouldn't call it a breakdown exactly. The thing is, the law is inherently reactive. It relies on precedent. But AI, advanced facial recognition, these global digital networks, they are entirely unprecedented.
There is no precedent.
Exactly. So what you're seeing is a desperate, almost violent adaptation. Government agencies are taking existing, totally outdated tools like an export law from the Cold War and trying to hammer them onto 21st century problems. It is a massive structural strain.
And a lot of that structural strain is being driven by the mega corporations building this tech. And honestly, their financial reality is just terrifying.
Oh, the price tag of the AI era is staggering.
Let's look at SpaceX. Before the Juneteenth market pause, their stock SBCX closed Thursday at $185 a share. It's up 37% from its IPO price, and just a few days ago, it hit an all-time high of over $225.
Which looks incredible on paper.
Right, on paper, they just pulled off a massive, record-shattering $75 billion IPO.
But the underlying math tells a much, much more anxious story.
Days after raising $75 billion, the Street reports they are already preparing a bond offering of over $20 billion. I mean, what? They are literally passing the hat for massive debt immediately after going public because they are torching cash. They lost nearly $5 billion last year. And in just the first 3 months of 2026, they posted a net loss of over $4.28 billion.
Yeah, and that money isn't just going into building rockets. It's the AI division that absorbed Elon Musk's XAI. That entire division is acting like a financial black hole right now.
But the assumption has always been that once these tech monoliths hit the major stock indexes, their value is permanently secured, right?
That's the illusion. Aswath Damodaran, the finance professor at NYU, he published a piece on Seeking Alpha that completely dismantles that idea for companies like SpaceX, OpenAI, and Anthropic.
Okay, break that down for us.
So he's addressing the fading power of the S&P 500 inclusion effect. In the past, being added to a major index meant active fund managers really scrutinized your stock and bought in. It created this very solid price floor.
Right, it was a safety net.
Exactly. But because of the massive rise of passive investing, meaning everyday people and large institutions just dump their money into automated tracker funds rather than actively trading, the entire mechanics of the market have changed.
Because the automated funds just blindly buy a tiny slice of everything.
Bingo. So that protective bump a company used to get from joining an index is now way smaller and much more temporary than people think. These companies are going to have to survive on their actual balance sheets, not just index momentum. And a balance sheet showing a $4 billion quarterly loss driven by AI development. That is deeply precarious.
So SpaceX is burning over $4 billion in a single quarter on AI, essentially forcing them to pass the hat for $20 billion right after a massive IPO. Are we so blinded by the tech hype that we are actively funding our own real-life Weyland-Yutani mega corporations without realizing the financial math that might not even make sense?
I'm so glad you brought up Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah.
Because that NPR cultural essay this week went incredibly viral for exactly this reason.
Yeah, it argues that in the Alien franchise, the real monster isn't the xenomorph alien, it's Weyland-Yutani, the fictional mega corporation that employs the crew.
Right. They are the ultimate employer with absolute, completely unchecked power over its workers across the galaxy. And NPR points out how perfectly this resonates with our current reality. I mean, we are actively debating how AI will replace labor and how these corporate giants are governed.
So the investors are basically ignoring the monster.
Investors are currently treating AI like it's a new fundamental force of nature, like electricity. They're willing to tolerate catastrophic financial losses because the perceived risk of missing out on the AI revolution is somehow scarier to them than the actual math.
Wow.
But Damodaran's warning about the S&P 500 is the canary in the coal mine. If the market mechanics won't protect them forever, eventually the reality of that cash burn has to catch up. And if these companies achieve unchecked power before the mad catches up, those Weyland-Yutani comparisons stop being pop culture metaphors and start being structural realities. We project our real-world anxieties onto our screens. We aren't really afraid of a monster with acid for blood. We're afraid of an unstoppable corporate entity that views human beings as expendable.
Okay, that is incredibly heavy. I mean, we're talking about geopolitical choke points, constitutional crises, and AI monopolies burning billions of dollars. But while all of that is happening in the stratosphere, nature is literally throwing its own chaos into the mix on the ground this weekend for everyday people.
Oh, the weather extremes are severe right now. Down on the Gulf Coast, communities are dealing with the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur.
Yeah, there are active flash flood warnings across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. Some areas have been hit with over 10 inches of rain since Arthur made landfall on Wednesday.
That's a massive amount of water.
It really is. And then, in complete contrast to that, an incredibly dangerous heat dome is parked right over the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The heat indices are forecast to hit 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit right through the holiday weekend.
It's a stark reminder that while governments are up there arguing about digital borders and export laws, physical geography and extreme weather still dictate the boundaries of daily human survival.
Absolutely. And honestly, the urge to escape all this systemic strain is massive right now. People are finding that escape in the sheer unpredictability of sports this weekend. I mean, look at the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills.
The established giants are crumbling under the pressure.
Totally. Rory McIlroy opened strong but completely faded in round 2 with 3 straight bogeys on holes 10 through 12. Bryson DeChambeau shot a 75 and is projected to completely miss the cut. Meanwhile, Wyndham Clark is quietly setting a historic 36-hole course record at 7 under. He's taking a 4-shot lead over big names like Xander Schauffele, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Sam Stevens.
It's great to watch. The shifting of the guard provides a real narrative escape for people.
And New York City definitely found its escape on Thursday with pure celebration. Mayor Eric Adams officially proclaimed it Jalen Brunson Day after Brunson dropped 45 points in the clinching Game 5 to win the NBA title for the Knicks over the Spurs.
Which was huge.
Huge. But the truly global escape, the thing unifying people right now, is the 2026 World Cup.
The tournament is delivering massive drama. I mean, Brazil crushed Haiti. Morocco held on to beat Scotland 1-0.
And tonight we have Turkey versus Paraguay. Paraguay's Matias Calarza scored in the first minute, taking an early lead. And if that result holds, it actually clinches Group D for the United States.
Which would be amazing.
Although the USMNT already did their part, they secured their spot in the round of 32 by beating Australia 2-0 in Seattle on Thursday. And they did it without Christian Pulisic, which is crazy. Fuller and Balogun forced a Cameron Burgess own goal, and then Alex Freeman doubled the lead off a deflected shot by Serginho Guest. So now they are heading to SoFi Stadium to play Turkey on June 25.
The sports provide the drama, for sure, but I think the most fascinating detail coming out of the World Cup isn't even happening on the pitch. It's a cultural phenomenon happening online.
Oh my gosh, yes. International fans traveling to the U.S. for the games are going totally viral for marveling at everyday American dining customs. NPR highlighted these fans posting videos, literally losing their minds over the concept of free drink refills.
It's so wholesome.
And specifically, the unlimited fresh bread rolls at Texas Roadhouse. Honestly, with all these tense diplomatic talks breaking down in Switzerland over nuclear negotiations, maybe the real diplomatic strategy should be sending world leaders to a Texas Roadhouse. Why is it that amidst AI crises and minefield straits, unlimited bread rolls are bridging the geopolitical divide?
Well, think about it. Diplomacy at the highest level is all about leverage, resources, and zero-sum outcomes. The Strait of Hormuz is about who controls the energy supply. Anthropic AI models are about who controls the intelligence. It is all deeply, deeply defensive.
Right. Everything is a negotiation.
Exactly. But sitting down in a restaurant and just being handed something warm, comforting, and unexpectedly free, that bypasses that defensive, analytical part of the brain entirely.
It's disarming.
It is hospitality.
Yeah.
In a week defined by hyper-complex existential anxieties and these massive battles for control, a simple, tangible pleasure like a warm roll and a free Diet Coke is just a universally understood language of goodwill. It is the exact opposite of a zero-sum game.
That is the perfect way to frame it. So let's quickly recap the journey we just took today. We started in the physical waters of the Middle East, where 80 mines are holding up 550 ships, while Meta navigates the digital fallout of that exact same conflict with algorithmic moderation.
Right. And then we watched the U.S. government stretch its legal boundaries, from the Commerce Department treating AI usage like a literal weapon export, to the DHS quietly sharing federal facial recognition tech with local police, to those Emory students calling out self-policing judges.
Then we examine the terrifying financial math of the AI revolution, with SpaceX burning over $4 billion in a single quarter, passing the hat for a $20 billion bond just days after a record IPO.
A reality that feels eerily reminiscent of the unchecked corporate power we fear in the Alien franchise.
Completely. And finally, we saw how everyday people are weathering 10-inch rainstorms and 110-degree heat domes, but finding their escape in Wyndham Clark's historic golf run, Jalen Brunson's NYC parade, the USMNT advancing in the World Cup, and the surprisingly unifying power of free drink refills. All of these sources together paint a picture of a world balancing right on the edge of massive technological leaps and fundamental human needs.
And this matters directly to you. Whether it is the Fourth Amendment protections in your own hometown facing new surveillance tools, or the AI software your company is suddenly forcing you to use at work, or just trying to keep your family cool during a holiday weekend heat dome. These high-level clashes of control, they aren't abstract. They dictate the rules, the economy, and the physical safety of your daily reality.
Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over. If the government is already stretching the absolute limits of the Constitution just to regulate how we use AI today, and mega corporations are burning billions of dollars to build it while simultaneously being viewed as the literal monsters in our pop culture, what happens when a Wayland-Yutani-style corporation actually achieves artificial general intelligence? When that day comes and the government's only tool is an outdated export law from the previous century, who will actually be in control of the elected state or the server farm? Enjoy your Juneteenth weekend, stay cool, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.